Hi, my name is Aaron Walker. I'm founder of Iron Sharpens Iron Mastermind, and I want to invite you to listen today on leadership and loyalty as I really dive deep into an automobile accident that I had where it radically changed my life. You know, there was a time in my life that I literally was going to kill someone that stole a business deal from me, and I'm talk at length about this. But on the other side of that, isolation is the enemy to excellence. And if you want to live a life that takes you to heights you've never been, stay tuned and listen as we go deep.
Welcome back to part two of our delicious conversation with Aaron Walker. He is a man with a multi-layered story that goes from anger and hate towards forgiveness, fellowship, community, service, and the importance and power of those things. He's a guy who has had 14 business. He's retired 3 times, the first time at 27 years old, and he's the best-selling author of View from the Top, Living a Life of Significance, and he's also the founder of Iron Sharpens Iron Mastermind Groups. In the past, in part one, we talked about how he grew that business, how he sold it, and we talked about this, how his life was in many ways at the top of Success Mountain. I mean, he'd made it. Nice house, nice car, beach house, lovely family, had his church, his faith, etc., etc. And then suddenly, on a particular Wednesday, he mowed somebody down with his car, obviously completely by accident, and was erased of any responsibility in the incident. But taking a life even by accident, I just want you to stop for a minute and imagine what that would be like for you. Like, you know, we've all seen the movie, right? Where somebody kills somebody by accident. Can you imagine how that would rattle your reality? We're not talking about maliciously taking somebody's life. We're talking about it's an accident. But what does that do to you? And we talked about the dark path that led him down and what that brought up for him. And we even talked about his journey out. But I want to come back to that for a moment because I want to talk about, you know, we were talking about the dark night of the soul, but let's talk about where that darkness went for you, Aaron, personally. You know, because as humans, we have all the emotions. We have joy, we have bliss, we have kindness, we have compassion, but we also have anger and hate and all the carnal stuff too. Talk to us a little bit about that dark side of that journey.
You know, in the accident of, I really dealt a lot with, I couldn't forgive myself. Like it wasn't even my fault, right? It wasn't, I didn't do anything wrong. I wasn't drinking. I wasn't speeding. I wasn't talking on the phone. He just didn't see me. He was 77 years old. He was from the Philippines, and he'd been warned over and over not to travel alone. And he decided to go to Lowe's, you know, and so he was catching the bus to go to Lowe's. And I felt so bad because that was somebody's dad, somebody's husband, somebody's brother, somebody's grandfather. And I'm like, man, I can't even imagine, like, I'm a grandfather. I have 2 beautiful daughters and 5 grandkids. And I think if I were taken out today, just unexpectedly, like yesterday we were all together, today I would be gone. Just the pain and the agony that his family went through as a result of that. And it was just so difficult. And I just thought, well, if I'd left earlier, if I'd left later, if I had turned right instead of left, and many people that have deep relationships with me said, yeah, if you'd done that, you might have hit an automobile and killed 5 people. I mean, you never know. You never know. So we can't second guess ourselves.
No, absolutely.
From that standpoint, it was dealing with the inability to forgive myself. And so I carried that for a number of years. God finally gave me the grace to be able to deal with that and work through it over a period of time. I did also deal with a lot of anger and a lot of anxiety in another business deal. When you've owned 14 businesses, you go through a lot of transactions. And there was one particular transaction. I was heavily involved in real estate, have been my entire career. And there was one particular real estate investment that I had made. You know, the irony of this is it was only a couple of years before the accident. And I was a young man, and I bought a piece of property, and I went to the closing. And at the closing, the gentleman that was buying it from me was a very noted businessman here in Nashville. If I called his name and you did a little research, you would see who he was. He'll remain anonymous for this interview. And he sat across the table from me, and he pointed out a glitch in the contract, and it cost me $41,000. And he laughed at me in front of two lawyers and a banker and an admin that was sitting at the table. He laughed at me, leaned back in his chair, pointed his finger at me, and he said, "I got you." Well, I really needed that money. You know, I mean, that was accounted for, and there was things that I needed to do. And I looked at my attorney, and he goes, "He's right. There's a technicality in the contract, and he can exercise that technicality, and he got you." I signed the documents and I left. And as we've already talked about numbers of times, I'm very involved in my church. You know, I've been a believer since I was 9 years old. So it was for me just working through the forgiveness part, but I couldn't forgive this guy. I became very bitter, and I was very angry. It became the filter by which I ran everything through. So every business deal I did from then on, for a couple of years, that was the filter. And I grew to hate this guy. And I'm embarrassed to admit that publicly on this interview, but I did. I grew to hate this guy, and I was trying to figure out how I could get him. And I was plotting against him, like figuring out, like, you're going to pay, like you took advantage. You know what I think it was, Dove, is that he laughed at me and he made a mockery of me in front of professionals. And I think that hurt as bad as the money.
Hey, bruised your ego.
Yeah, it did. It destroyed it right there. It's like, hey, you know, I appeared to be less than informed businessman. I couldn't make a good decision, and it really belittled me. So I could go through all kind of feelings that I had. So about 2 years into the bitterness and the hatred, a buddy of mine calls me and said, "Hey, do you want to go to Buffalo, Wyoming on an antelope and a deer hunt?" And I'm like, "Yeah, man, you know I love to hunt." So he said, "Show up at this place at this time." He said, "There's 16 of us going." He said, "It'll be a great trip." And I said, "Great. This has been a lifelong friend of mine." Robin drives me to the drop-off location. I get my luggage. I get my gun out. I leave, and I kiss her bye. She drives away, and I turn around. And as soon as I turn around, I look. We'll call him John for this interview. Yep. There stood John. And I was like, "You have got to be kidding me." And I couldn't get my wife back. You know, she'd already gone. And I'm like, "We're going to be gone 2 weeks. I'm going to be on a trip with this guy." He gets in another car, another K5 Blazer. And I get in my buddies, and I go, "You didn't tell me this guy was coming." He said, "I didn't know I needed to tell you this guy was coming." Told him the story. We get to Buffalo, Wyoming. 24 hours later, we drove all night to get there from Nashville. Get out, go in, spend the night, go out, scout the next couple of days. We go to Johnny Z's property there in Buffalo, Wyoming to hunt. I go up on top of this hill, and I'm glassing the bottom for antelope and mule deer. And I see an individual walking across the bottom. Took my glass and I looked at him, and it's John. And he's got an orange vest on, and I'm by myself. He's by himself. And I said, "I'll kill him. I'll just shoot him." And I've got a .270 Remington bolt action. You don't want me shooting at you. I'm a good shot. I've been hunting my whole life.
Okay.
And I pick up the gun. I got the gun in my hand, and I start shaking. And I'm like, I can't even believe I'm thinking this. And he's not more than 200 yards away. And I said, I can hit him. I can kill him right here. And all of a sudden, I'm like, "What are you doing?" Like I have the gun in my hand. Like I'm literally going to shoot this guy. And I put the gun down, and I said, man, I start recounting. I'm a dad. Like I'm a leader in my church. I'm a businessman. I'm a successful. And what am I doing? I tease about it. I say the only reason I didn't is he had an orange vest on. I don't know how I could have proved that I thought it was an antelope or a mule deer with wearing an orange vest. But that orange vest saved him. So we got back in the truck. 2 weeks later, we're headed home. We get 60 miles outside of Nashville. His truck breaks down. We're 60 miles from home. I get out of the Blazer I'm in, and I walk up to him. I haven't spoke to him in 2 weeks. I walk up to him and I said, "Hey, John, you can get somebody to take me to my house. We're only an hour away. I've got a Blazer there I'm not using. You can drive it until you get your truck fixed." And he looks at me like I hit him with a boat paddle.
Yeah.
He said, "What are you saying?" I'm saying that if you get somebody to take me to my house, you can borrow my truck. You see, Dove, I had to forgive that guy because I was the one in bondage.
Mm-hmm.
And he looked at me. We got somebody, they took him to my house. He borrowed my truck. And he goes, "Aaron," he said, "I'm going to pay you that money back." I said, "I don't want the money. I didn't do this for the money. And to be honest with you, I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing this for me."
Mm-hmm.
And he borrowed my truck, got his fixed, bought my truck back, and I let that go. You see, I felt like an anvil had been taken off my chest when I forgave that guy because the bitterness was eroding me. It was killing me, and I was about to do something really silly, and that would have ruined my life forever. So I want to encourage the people that are out there today. Someone may have done something to you. They don't even deserve forgiveness. But you don't deserve to carry around that bitterness and that anger because it's going to thwart your future success, because it's going to disallow you from being all that you were called to be. And even if they don't, you need to forgive that person so you are set free.
I think that's incredibly important. And so thank you for sharing that so much, Aaron. I really do appreciate it. I think that it's a really important piece because there's a lot of claptrap about forgiveness. I hear it all the time. And I've heard it from friends of mine who are Christian who said to me, "I handed it over to Jesus." And I'm like, bullshit. Sorry. Bullshit. This is it's got nothing to do with Jesus. This is you. You got to deal with this. This is yours to deal with. And part of that forgiveness is to go to the nth degree of being able to recognize this is where this can poison me to. Yeah. And part of my work is saying, what are the ramifications? What are the consequences? Because, okay, I go to jail and I spend the rest of my life in jail. That's kind of shitty. Don't want that. But what's the impact on my wife? What's the impact on my daughters? What's the impact on my grandkids? What's the impact on the members of my church who have to now somehow try and find a way to defend this guy who was a member of their church that they spoke so many good things about, who is now a murderer? What's the impact of that on the church? Do people lose faith because, well, here's a good guy who says he was a good Christian who murders somebody? What's the impact? Like we don't pay attention to the ripples. And I think for me, that's one of the big parts of the work that I do is like your life is a rock in a pond.
Yeah.
You are constantly creating ripples, even when you can't see the ripples. We talked about my purpose before we went on air, and I said my purpose is to impact the lives of those people whose names I will never know and who will never know my name. That means I'm a rock dropped in the pond, and there's a ripple going to hit somebody and lift some boat that I will never know, and we'll never know where that ripple came from. But it's my job to make sure I create that positive ripple for them. And, and you taking that on, recognizing that is so powerful and important. And I want you to know that, again, how genuinely and deeply grateful I am to you for sharing that and sharing the impact of feeling like you could go there. You're in the body, you're a human being, you have an ego that got severely wounded, that then tries to recover by doing something really crazy, but you made a way back. How was, you talked about iron sharpened iron, you talk about mastermind groups, you've talked about your church, you've talked about your board of advisors, etc. How was your community? How did that, or your communities, how did they help you to get to that place where you could go to the edge of that cliff but not jump?
Yeah, here's the thing that a lot of people are introverted. They say, I don't need relationships. They don't need people around them. And I contend that we all need people. We all need
We are
people.
tribal beings.
Yeah, we are. We need that camaraderie. We need to be able to lock arms and go. And I need to be able to borrow your strength and your power when I don't have any. I need to lean on you and say, hey, how do you see this? You got to be willing to throw the flag on my BS. Right. And you can't do that if I haven't subjected myself to your scrutiny. I've got to walk alongside you and trust Dove enough to know he's got my best interest at heart. The only way I can get there is if I spend time with you. Like if I don't know you intimately and I don't know your aspirations, your goals, I don't know your propensity, I don't know your vision, I don't know your family, how in the world can I ever give you advice that is applicable to you? And see, we go out here and we try to go it alone. Listen, it's lonely at the top. You need people around you to help you make these decisions. And so at a very early age, I learned that the relationships matter most. It's my number one core value. And if we're really not paying attention to the relationships, we're really not being the giver instead of the taker, right? You give and you give and you give. And then later it's going to be your turn. You're going to need that reciprocity at some point. But if you haven't invested the time, if you haven't made the contribution, you're going to be walking that path in a dark, lonely place. And things are going to happen to us. We can't predict it. We can't ever see the blind spots. We can't see when we're blindsided at some point. And you're going to need people in your corner to walk that journey with you. And so if I didn't have that, I would still be in a fetal position under my desk, right? I wouldn't come out of my office. I wouldn't leave my home. But because I've had that level of encouragement and I have subjected myself to these other people, they're able to walk along and give me the strength. And
again, profoundly important. You know, part of my work is we don't just need a community, but we need a community of people. It's what you've just said, really, where there is reciprocal vulnerability.
Yeah.
If you want to know what trust is, it's very simple. Trust is reciprocal vulnerability. My language, not yours, I understand. My language is, you know my shit, I know yours, and I'm not willing to use it against you, and you're not willing to use mine against me.
Right.
But it's so that we are completely transparent with each other, and that reciprocal vulnerability builds enormous trust. And I say to people, why do you trust this person? And they go, well, you know, I've known them a long time. I go, time's got nothing to do with trust.
No.
I've met people I trust in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I've met people, I know people that I've known for 20 years I don't trust. It's got nothing to do with time. It's reciprocal vulnerability. Will you open your heart, your soul, your mind, your ego to me? And will I open it up to you? And
see, that's what's so cool is at the intersection of vulnerability and transparency is where real strength begins.
Right.
And once we get to that spot, we can build on that. But until we get there, it's all a facade. I had breakfast with a guy I know a few weeks ago, and I went and I told him, I said, hey, I said, Robin and I are thinking about buying a condo down in Southern Florida. I said, do you think that would be a good idea? And he thought for a minute and he said, yeah, I think it'd be a great idea. I said, why do you think it would be a good idea? He said, well, you said you and Robin were thinking about it, so I assumed you wanted to do that. I said, but do you think that's a good move for me? He goes, yeah, I think that would be good. You've been working your whole life. And I said, no disrespect. I said, but you really doesn't have a clue. And he said, what do you mean? I said, you don't know Robin. You don't know Brooke or Holly. You don't know any of my grandchildren. You don't know my propensity. You don't know my vision. You don't know my history. You don't know if I'm a creator, developer, or a maintainer, manager. You have no idea if I can afford it or not because you don't have a clue about my finances. And the truth is you don't know if it's a good idea or not. And he goes, no, I really don't. I said, you know what the irony of that is? My mastermind group members, they can answer that question. You know why? Because I spend time with them. And you know how they help me each and every day? Because I'm vulnerable in front of them and they can answer every one of those questions. They know about my finances and my history, and they know whether it's a good decision for me or not. See, the funny thing is we go on these weekend excursions, these mastermind groups. You take advice from a person sitting across a bonfire from you wearing a name tag. You don't even know who they are, and they're giving you advice, and you're making lifelong decisions as a result of feeling this emotional connectedness to people that don't even know you. You have no idea their credibility or their honesty, their integrity, or their ability to give you this insight. And I implore people to really get involved in something, whether it's iron sharpens iron or you get involved somewhere. It doesn't matter to me. I want you to get involved with people that you're willing to let that veil down. You're willing to be transparent and vulnerable. It takes time. You can't just go in a weekend and do this. You got to get to know people. They earn that trust over time. They get to know you well, then they can help you make these lifelong decisions.
I fully agree. In the masterminds that we run, we say that nobody's allowed to give any advice without knowing the person. So if you're going to give advice and you don't know the person about something, you say, okay, here's my advice based on what you said, but it's not the right advice because I don't know you yet.
Correct.
So this is the advice I'm going to give you. Tell me what I don't know. And then
with that caveat, I totally accept that approach.
Yeah,
right?
tell me what I don't know, because you're assuming I got $1 million in the bank and I'm 40 in deficit. Or you're assuming I've got 40 in deficit and I've got a couple of million in the bank.
Right.
That's just money.
Right.
But what about everything else? The fact that I can't do something that's not Christian or aligned with my Christian values, or I can't do something that's not aligned with the Quran and I'm a devout Muslim, or whatever it might be, or I can't do something that isn't about this or about that. Like, if you don't find those things out, that community, I fully agree with you. And it's what I really love about what you're doing, Aaron, is that iron sharpens iron, your work, your mastermind work. It's easy to assume masterminds are about better business. Certainly they are. But yours are about fellowship. Yours are about community, right?
I'll tell you, we cover the whole person. And the reason we do is there again, man, I'm telling you, Dove, you're getting stuff out of me today. I'm feeling pretty naked here right now, but
thank you.
There was a time, I don't know if I thank you or not. I'm not sure yet if I'm going to be appreciative
well, I'm thanking you.
This level of transparency or not, but it's just who I am. I can't stand it when people have done very well and they hide behind this. I only work, 3 hours a day and I live on the beach in Hawaii. There's problems behind that. And I want to be that guy that says, hey, things are good, but I got problems I deal with. There's real things in my life. And I want to be able to share that, even though I've had a measure of success. But there was a point in time where I came home in my mid 30s and I had a pocket full of money. And I came home to a house full of strangers. Mm-hmm. And Robin came up to me one day and she said, I want you to know how grateful I am that you've worked so hard. I thank you for this beautiful home, our place on the beach, our beautiful cars. Like, I get to stay at home every day. Like, I am so grateful for that. But I'm raising our daughters. Mm-hmm. I'm taking them to Girl Scout practice and basketball practice and cheerleading camp. And thank you for working, but this is not what I signed up for. Like, I want you to help. I want you to be involved. And it was a real eye-opening experience for me. And some of the people that I surround myself with encouraged me to really put those boundaries up and guardrails and prioritize my priorities and really figure out what was important in life. Making money is important. I like to make money. I want to make more money, but I don't want to do it at the expense of my family. I don't want to come home one day and Brooke or Holly go, hey, thank you, Dad. It's been a good one. I'm out of here. I'm tapping out. And then I don't have a relationship with them in the future. You see, we only get one go through with them kids. We don't get another go through. Like, when they're 16, 17 years old, they move out, they go to college, they're gone. And if you've got another email to write, or you've got another speaking engagement, or you've got another thing, that's fine. but put boundaries around it, because if that little boy's wanting to throw baseball and you keep putting him off, he's going to find somebody to pay attention to him. If you've got that little girl that wants to bond with you and lay in the floor and play with Barbie dolls, and you never do that with your little girl, she's going to find somebody later that will, and she's going to have nothing to do with you in the future. Thank God I was able to wake up as a result of this encouragement from other people. Today, my daughter's 39, the other one's 37. I have a fabulous relationship. My oldest daughter is the chief operating officer of our company. I get to work with her each and every day. If I hadn't spent time with them, like I'm telling you listeners out there to do right now, she wouldn't want anything to do with me or our company. And I want you to make yourself available and really understand. Listen, if you don't have accountability every single week, it is so easy for me to work. I love to work. I would work around the clock if I didn't have accountability and mastermind members and people that checked on me, because I love what I do. And it can suck you in, and you can do it at the expense of your family. And I don't want that to happen to you. I want relationships to matter most. And when you really get your focus, the irony of that is I make more money today than I've ever made in my career because I've got my priorities in the right order.
That is very powerful, poignant. We live so much in, and I've written a lot about this, that we're living in the, we talked about it in the beginning of part one, where we talked about the Great Resignation. And, we can talk about the political, we can talk about the economics of it, but from a psychological point of view, I've written about it as the pandemic created what I call the Great Pause. It created a dark night of the soul for the planet, where we stopped and we went, hold on a second, I'm on this treadmill. What the heck am I doing? Mm-hmm. I'm working 60 hours a week to get more money, to buy a bigger house that I never come home to work in a job that I used to really love, but now it's just a toil. And I haven't been to a kid's recital or a game. What am I doing? And this, as I talked about, this is not just going on in America. For those of you who are thinking, oh, this is an American thing. No, hold on. Take a pause. China, people have gone back to the villages. Vietnam, people have gone back to the villages. These are countries that don't have the same kind of democracy you likely live with. They've gone, enough. I'm reassessing my values. There's this pause. And again, it's a dark night of the soul in the form of COVID and a global shutdown, but it doesn't have to be. But it's that moment where you create those boundaries, particularly if you're like Aaron and myself, who I love what I do. I love my work. My wife came home from her hairdresser yesterday, and she was talking to him, and she said, and he said, well, where's Dov this evening? And she goes, oh, he'll be working. He goes, it's 8:00 at night. He goes, oh, he'll be working until I come home. And he goes, is he a workaholic? She goes, no, he just loves what he does. And it's true. But the moment my wife walks in the door, work is over. The moment my kids are over here, work is over. The moment my grandkids are over, work is over. It's like, I love that you make this point that you have to have the boundaries. Just because you love it doesn't mean you should do it all the time, because the answer to that very simple question is, well, do you love your family? You love your work, great.
People say that. Here's the thing, that the irony I find in that is everybody says, oh, I'm doing this for my family. I love my family more than anything. I want to do this for my family. I think you need a gut check. I think you need to really ask yourself what you're doing it for. I can tell you what you love most by where you spend your time.
I'm with you.
And
check your calendar.
Right.
It'll tell you what values you have.
It doesn't matter to me what you say. Your actions are screaming loudly. And so if you really love your family, you're going to spend some time with them. Nobody can be those kids' dad but you. Nobody can be your wife's husband but you. Nobody can be the wife but you to that husband, right? That's your unique role, and nobody else should be filling that role. So I just don't want you to lose your family on the altar. of making more money. Listen, money doesn't scratch the itch like you think it's going to scratch it anyway. No. It's good to have it again for the second time. I don't want to diminish the fact that money doesn't give you options. It allows me to travel. I drive a brand new Toyota Tundra pickup truck, the nicest one they make. Like, I love those things. I just don't want those things controlling me.
No.
I want to be in charge of the money. Money is a tool to live our life, and we need to be very, very careful. One of my very good friends, Rabbi Daniel Lapin, wrote a great book, Thou Shalt Prosper. I just interviewed Daniel last week. He came to our community, and I had him as a guest for the third time. And he talked about this very thing. Money is a tool, and let's use it as a tool.
Absolutely. Well, Aaron, this has been a pleasure and an honor, sir. Thank you. I'm deeply grateful for you taking the time to be with us, to share your wisdom, your knowledge, and your insights with everybody on the show. Again, great pleasure. Please tell our listeners where they can find out more about you, your community, and all the wonderful resources that you have.
Yeah, Dove, this has been so fun, man. I wished all the interviews were like this. You make me feel so welcome, and I've just had a great time interacting with you today. If you're interested in learning more about me and our company, viewfromthetop.com is the place to go. We're opening up 3 new groups for mastermind members. First time we've done that, Dove, in 3 years, 4 years, 3 or 4 years. First time we've opened new groups, but we're doing it because the transformational experience of people around the world is incredible. And we want to open this up to other participants. So, hey, doesn't cost anything to reach out. Let's have a conversation. Let's see if it's for you. Fill out an application. There's no commitment by filling out the application. You just have a conversation with me, and we see if this is something that would serve you well. So just go to viewfromthetop.com, and we would love to have a conversation with you.
Beautiful. Well, again, thank you so much, Aaron Walker. It's been a pleasure. Of course, we will post all of those links in the show notes so you can find out more about Aaron, about all of his resources, about Iron Sharpens Iron, and of course, his fabulous book. You can also hang out with other conscious leaders and chat about this episode or any past episodes inside of our Facebook or LinkedIn groups. Just look for Leadership and Loyalty Podcast. Remember that those who control the meaning for the tribe also control the movement of the tribe. In your business, you have to understand what your meaning is, and you have to drive that meaning home in order to bring the value that you really want. Now it's your chance to tap into breaking the groundbreaking understanding of how to apply your anatomy of meaning extracted from your emotional source code for yourself and for those that you serve. I'm Dov Barron. I show businesses, teams, and leaders how to harness the emotional source code to move their tribe, because unified actualized meaning is the one single monolithic difference between mediocrity and greatness for all individuals and companies. I want to thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. Till next time, stay curious, my friend. Stay curious about the value of community, about the value of a community that has reciprocal vulnerability, that can guide you, direct you, and support you, even in the dark night of your soul, so that you get a view from the top after you've been at the bottom, and you don't have to go to the very bottom. There's a turnaround point right now. I'm Dov Barron. I'm here to assist you tapping into your deepest meaning to reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, your life, and your leadership impact. And I am out.